Square. On the desk tonight, Bono and Ice and Karen Feinerman, Dan Nathan, and Guy Adami will join us in just moments. And we start off tonight with a big rally on Wall Street to kick off the week. The Dow climbing more than 1.3%, is now up nearly 15% from October lows. S&P and Nasdaq also rising nearly 1% today as investors await a big week for stocks. Tomorrow's midterm elections, Thursday's CPI report, and yes, more earnings. So how do you make sense of these market moves today? In particular, Dan, it was technology that really lifted.
It was. And, technology, it wasn't a layup from the get-go here. We opened the morning with the news about Apple. And again, that was kind of a head scratcher. If you think about it, we had their earnings just about 2 weeks ago. It was the only mega cap tech name that actually traded well after its earnings here. And so the realization that maybe China's sales aren't going to be as good as they just said 2 weeks ago was kind of weighing on the NASDAQ. But I think you had these dueling headlines. We're going to talk a little bit about why Meta, Facebook, was rallying a little bit. And I think that's the sentiment that I think a lot of investors were like, listen, how much more bad news can we get for these names that have had nothing but bad news over the course of the year? So you think about, we're heading into tomorrow. Again, like you said, Mel, we may not know the results of the election for a few days, but it seems very likely that we're going to have a bit of a split government. And I think that's the thing that investors, at least in the near term, before this CPI print on Thursday morning, we can kind of probably continue to rally a little bit. But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like a great broad-based rally. Mike Santoli just said the seasonality of year end or whatever, that's fine here, but we're still in a bit of a mess. And, earnings are going to be declining next year. And I'm not sure the S&P multiple right now reflects where earnings are going to be in 2023. Yeah.
So I agree with a lot of what Dan said. I think it was sort of interesting today. It was sort of levitating. I don't even really know exactly on what. Yeah. I don't know if maybe there's some feeling about China maybe reopening somewhat, but I think you also have to be concerned about the new, I don't know, Cold War, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know if that was part of it. I do think some of it has been, the polls seem to keep showing more and more of a red turn to the election. So I guess that's part of it as well. And then CPI, I don't even know exactly what we're hoping for, right? I don't know what, I guess something right up the sort of middle of the fairway. But I think that if it's on the cooler side, I think that will again spark a rally, even though the Fed has been quite hawkish.
Yeah, I mean, today's rally was the kind of rally where you look at your computer and it looks fine. You walk away half an hour later and you're like, what happened? Yeah. Which is basically what I did and saw the rally. Bono.
Nothing. I think really, the underlying effects are sentiment has been a bit oversold, and we've talked to all types of strategists and asset allocators, and they've talked about how people are underinvested. And so I think we talked about it a bit last week going into the Fed print. I think there is this tendency right now to look for a reason to allocate to the upside so that you're not missing performance. And that becomes even more dire heading into the end of the year when you've got to turn in that scorecard. And so I think that's a lot of the reason for this. And then if you kind of look at what's expected from the polls, you are expecting Republicans to at least take one of two seats there, right? And the presupposed side effect of that is that will be positive and lead to this midterm type of rally into the second half of the year that we've all expected. But I'm with Dan. It's a push-pull between these short-term reasons for upside sentiment and an overhanging monetary policy that is, and Fed, which is not partisan, which is still the headwind that's kind of like overhanging this entire situation.
I mean, Guy, was it a good sign that Apple was able to turn around pair losses, finish in the positive today, despite that news that had been sort of an overhang? Or would you have rather, this is not a would you rather, by the way, I'm just using the two words next to each other, or would you have rather Apple actually sell off? Would that have been the opportunity to say, you know what, we are taking everything into consideration? The idea that iPhone demand may not be as strong will finally be factored into this stock, and maybe we can approach a bottom.
Yeah, I think that's the question is right. You're looking for the finish line here. When are we in the later innings of this market sell-off? And that's going to come, and Carter talks about this, that's going to come in the heels or in the wake of Apple probably trading down and making a new 52-week low, which obviously didn't happen today. So I guess if you're an Apple shareholder, you were somewhat happy about how it bounced back, but I think it just got dragged up with the broader market. It really had nothing to do with Apple itself. Apple has not traded well at all over the last week and a half, and quite frankly, other than those 2 days post-earnings, it hasn't traded well at all. And to try to explain what happened today, we've talked about it for a while, October 13th, 14th, and then that Monday the 17th. The setup there was similar to what we saw in June. The rally makes sense under those confines, but I do think it's going to be somewhat short-lived. I thought it would last into the midterm elections. Well, here we are, Melms.